Hey guys, welcome to the Joji Show, where we talk about everyday life things. My name is Joe and I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about positive toxicity, and we'll go about what that is and how this happens, and then I'll give you some examples to identify positive toxicity and 5 ways to overcome that. But before we get into it, I do want to invite, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. This will help the channel to continue growing. And for those of you who've been watching, please continue watching. We appreciate all the likes, all the comments, and I look forward to interacting with you even more. Every day in life, we go about every day hoping to have the best day ever. We put our best foot forward. We always have that positive outlook in everything, but it doesn't always pan out that way. You run into some sort of hiccup along the way, something that is negative, and society always expects us not to slow down to acknowledge those disappointments or those negative experiences we have, and instead we're supposed to always focus on what's positive and be happy about it, and look forward to all the good stuff. And if something bad is happening, or if you're struggling with something emotionally or that's negative, we're supposed to suppress that or ignore that or don't acknowledge it or respond to it. And I think that's a problem that we should address today. All that said, let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about, and then we can see how to get over it. If you think about it, from time to time, when you've gone through a tough situation or something really difficult, you've had someone who was well-meaning and somebody who really didn't mean any harm, but their way of supporting you was telling you, if you look on the bright side, blah 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 blah. Or they come to you and say, well, your feelings, the way you're feeling is a choice, really. Why don't you choose to focus on the positive? Why don't you choose to focus on the good stuff? Why don't you choose to be happy? Whatever. And admittedly, at one time, I used to be that person who would always tell people, why don't you choose to focus on the good instead of the bad? And now I have come to learn that this is not always the case. People don't choose to focus on the negative. Sometimes, you go through something and you can't help it. You have to stop and acknowledge what's going on and deal with it, heal from it, and then move on. And so, those kind of examples are problematic, and that's kind of the stuff that I want to talk about today. Or here's another one. And this is really something that we do to ourselves. You go through a tough situation, a tough patch, or whatever it is. And then in yourself, you catch yourself reacting to that negative thing and feeling down or feeling bad or whatever it is. And then guess what? You start to judge yourself, and you are hard on yourself, and you feel bad, or you feel ashamed, or you feel disappointed in yourself for acknowledging those feelings. And that's what I'm talking about. That's just not normal. It's not natural, and it's not the way it's supposed to be. If things are not going the right way, I think we as just natural beings are supposed to stop and acknowledge those things. Everything happens and it has a response. If you slice your finger, it's going to bleed, you're going to feel pain. You can't say, I'm not going to choose to focus on the blood and the pain that I'm feeling, and instead I'll feel happy about the whole finger didn't fall off, or whatever it is. It's just ridiculous. You take the time to make sure you clean the wound, you dress it up, you do whatever you need to do, and then you move on. And that's what we should do even with our emotions. And unfortunately, we don't give ourselves that space, and people outside don't even give us that space either. And when we want to deal with that, and when we're going through that, we get judged harshly, we judge ourselves harshly, and I think it's just unfortunate. Some signs of positive toxicity that we encounter, besides those examples that I just gave, is, like I say, just feeling ashamed or embarrassed or disappointed in ourselves when we acknowledge that negative emotion that we are feeling. And it's like we're supposed to just suppress that, push that to the side, don't think about it, don't acknowledge it. Instead, just look at all the positive stuff and be happy. And if something negative is happening, ignore that, because that's just not good. Another one is, like I say, just forcing you to ignore the negative. Like, if something happens that's negative, that's disappointing, that is not what you're expecting, that you're supposed to not acknowledge it, not respond to it or react to it, but instead only reacting to what's positive. That's problematic. And then another one that people tend to do is they'll brush you off if they don't want to deal with you, if they don't want to deal with those emotions themselves, if it makes them feel uncomfortable, it's a difficult situation, then they brush you off, they push you to the side, they trivialize it so that they don't have to acknowledge it themselves. I think, another problem. Or they shame you and they make you feel bad. They make you feel like you're less than, like you're weak because you're experiencing this, or because you are choosing to acknowledge those emotions. They make you feel like you're less than, and you feel like you're not a full whole human just because you had the nerve to really slow down and stop and take stock of something disappointing that happened in your life, and you felt bad about it, and that's just a problem with it. So how do we deal with it? Number one is just be real with yourself and your emotions and how you feel. You cannot fool yourself. You can fool everybody else. You can walk around here feeling good or looking good and smiling and everything is all good, but deep down you're hurting. Deep down you're in a space that's not just right, and to yourself, you owe yourself that honesty, that this is really difficult. Let me stop, let me take stock of what's going on, and let me deal with it. Don't fool yourself. Number two, acknowledge and manage those negative emotions you're feeling. If you stop and acknowledge how you're feeling, and then you come up with a way to deal with that, come up with a way to manage that, then you're not always going to feel that way, or you're not always going to remain down there. And in future, when that happens, you will know how to deal with it because you've done it before. Number three is to embrace those negative emotions. Sometimes you have negative and positive things that come together. A situation will present both, and we are somehow expected to take all the positive and reject the negative. And I think that's problematic. You should take both, embrace both of them, and appreciate them both because they both bring something out. I think of an example of, I had a friend who was really sick and he was really suffering, and then eventually he passed away. He lost his battle. And while it was really difficult to deal with that and to go through that, on one hand, ironically, there was a relief that he is no longer suffering. He is no longer having to experience that difficult pain that he was, but also there was a loss, and there was just emotional void that he was gone. And those two things, I couldn't just choose one over the other. I had to deal with both and accept both emotions, and then process them both, and then move on with life. Another one is to recognize the triggers that cause you to feel the way you do, and try to see them coming a long way, because they form patterns, and you know that when this happens, this tends to happen next, and then I feel this way. So once you know that, and once you see that it's about to happen, then you can be able to kind of like react to it and change it up, or do whatever you have to do to know that this is about to happen, which means XYZ will follow, and you can either change it or prepare yourself, because sometimes you can help it. You know that you have to go through this, and if you're prepared getting into it, then you go through it and come out on the other side much better, much faster, with less of heartache or difficulty than if it just catches you unawares. And then finally, also recognize all those toxic people who are around you, who are either beating you down or making you feel bad or pushing you down because you're feeling something negative, and cut them out. Just push them to the side. You don't need those kind of people. And sometimes they have to be around. It's just they're people who have to be around your life, so you keep them around, but you don't have to kind of like seek them for support when you're going through what you're going through, because you know that all they would do is make you feel worse. Instead, you hang out with them, you do what you have to do, but then when it's time, or when you feel like you need some positive support, you go find that elsewhere, where you know that you can actually count on that support. And those who are toxic, those who expect you to always be positive, those who think that you're less of a human because you're suffering negatively, then you can cut them out. But anyway, the bottom line is we do have to be honest with ourselves, be honest with our emotions and how we're feeling, and it helps us to learn how to cope with them, how to get through that negative thing faster, and also how to find joy, and over time how to help others who are going through what we're going through. So just be true with yourself, be true with how you're feeling, acknowledge it, deal with it, and then move on. Don't just dwell in it, don't fester in it, but also don't ignore it. So those are my thoughts, and that's how I deal with stuff. And like I said, I have actually had to come up. I used to be the kind of person who would tell you, choose to feel better about things and not, acknowledge how you're feeling, because I thought you can control things. But, we live, we learn, we grow. So I have learned, and now I'm a better person, and I'm hoping to help somebody else make the same proper choice. Anyway, let me know how you experience stuff, how you deal with it, what kind of things you do when you're feeling down, whether you, like me, whether you have previously, made people feel bad for acknowledging their emotions, or whether you've always been, Mr. or Mrs. looking at things in the right way.